Well, welcome everybody to a very special edition of the Brunch with BBB podcast. My name is Nick Hill, and joining me as always is my awesome co-host, Mr. Luis Feliz.
What's up, guys?
Now, you guys all may be wondering, what makes this episode so special? Well, you might want to consider tuning into our social media channels to see this one. And when I say see this one, I mean literally, because we are having a live taping session happening right now in person with our special guests. So I don't want to hold things up any longer, and I'm just going to get to it. So I want to introduce to you all our special guest of the day. He is the founder and CEO of Green Places. Welcome to the show, Alex Lassiter.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited. I thought we were going to have brunch. Does the brunch come now or afterwards? Or is it just a brunch in our heads?
Yeah.
We'll give you some Slim Jims.
Okay, Slim Jims is perfect.
Slim Jims for brunch.
It's kind of like a sausage link. Sort of.
There we go.
Yeah.
I like it. So as you know, we're super excited to have you on, bro. On today's show and in person, like Nick said. So it's definitely gonna help. It helps make things feel a little bit more personal, right? Mm-hmm. But before we get started, you have an important question, don't you?
We do. I know we talked about brunch a little bit, so I don't want the answer to this one to be Slim Jims. But the first question we ask every guest is, what is your favorite lunch spot or dish?
Ooh, my favorite brunch spot or dish?
Yeah. Could be both.
Oh, that's a good... So I have 3 young kids. So one of the things that's tough is brunch, right? Because like when you have kids that age, it's just like nobody wants to like... Especially like on a Sunday, the time that they wake up is like too early for brunch. And then by the time they get there, it's like a whole thing. But my wife and I do really love brunch. I would say... Our go-to when we can is Nofo. So we live really close to Nofo in 5 Points, and that is super solid. And I would say my favorite is probably like a breakfast burrito situation, or like I like a little bit of spice in the morning to kick things up, you know.
Okay.
So that's probably where I would lean. I think if I had to.
Nofo.
Yeah. I never been to. You've been to?
I've heard of it, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. But if they have spicy breakfast burritos, then I'm all in because we like our spice on the show.
Yep. So, Alex, before we get talking about Green Place, first we want to know a little bit about you. What made you start this organization? What is Green Place? Like when my colleagues were talking to me about it, I thought the name was super cool.
Thank you.
I was like, what is it? So the floor is yours.
Yeah, so Green Places is an all-in-one solution for sustainability. Like, if you're trying to be more sustainable, it is like the first and only call that you really need to make. I started the business because I spent the last 10 years building a restaurant software. So I built a software program. We sold to, maybe 10 to 12,000 restaurants across the country. And helped them with a slew of things related to a specific piece of their business. I sold that business in 2017 and was fortunate enough to do so. Worked for 2 years in another company that we sold it to, and I felt like I had this chance. This is right before the pandemic to like choose. You know, I was still pretty young. I was 30, and I felt like I had a lot of career ahead of me, and I felt like I had some skills that I wanted to put to the best use that I could. And for me, I mean, I've spent a lot of my life, outdoors. I was an Eagle Scout growing up. I spent 30 days in the woods with a program called Knowles in Wyoming. I've just spent a lot of time outside, and it's always been really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think when I had this chance to choose, I wanted to choose something that I felt like really mattered. So this is something that was important to me, and I felt like if I took the skills that I was pretty good at and I threw it in the direction of something that I felt like really mattered, I felt like it could be a great place for me to end up.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome stuff. And as someone like you, also I'm pretty outdoorsy. I love being outside. I just see the importance too of protecting all this, and especially for future generations too, like my kids, my grandkids. Like I think it's something really important. So it's awesome to hear some of the stuff that Green Places does. But for our listeners who aren't maybe as familiar as we are here at BBB, what does Green Places do to help businesses become more sustainable?
Good question. You could think of us as like the head of sustainability for thousands of businesses. So we do kind of what a head of sustainability would, but we aren't going to cost what a head of sustainability might cost. So there's kind of 4 pieces to it. The first is we do what's called your carbon accounting, which in a lot of ways is like it's doing what your figure out what your carbon footprint is. So here's how much your business produces and where are the major sources of emissions. And so we can tell a business exactly what does their carbon footprint look like. The second thing we do is we help them, what we say is build a path to net zero. But what we're doing is we're saying, here's your sources of emissions, and like, here's the options of what you can do about it. So we know you're a restaurant. So we know here's all the things that a restaurant can do to reduce your emissions. You're a retailer. Here's what you can do. You're a law firm. Here's what you can do. And we're helping you sort of look at those major categories, identify what it is you can actually do, and then help you get there. The third thing we do is we invest in the environment on your behalf. So if your business produces 10,000 tons of carbon, we can go out and pull 10,000 tons of carbon out of the atmosphere. We can go plant trees in your name. We can protect forests in your name. We can do all kinds of stuff to be able to balance out that whatever you do, you go and you remediate on the other side. If wetlands are important to you, we can help you on that. There's all different types of things to be able to kind of even out your impact. That doesn't mean that you don't produce emissions anymore, but it is a way for you to participate. And what happens is if you do that, especially if you can do that in the exact amount that you produce, you get to earn what's called a carbon neutral badge, which is what BBB has, which allows you to be able to tell your employees, your customers, your constituents that you're doing what you can to be able to fight climate change and be able to be a part of the solution. Now, the fourth thing we do for people is we help them talk about it because this stuff is kind of confusing. And we recognize that a business might be really good about talking about themselves, but talking about themselves and the climate adds a new layer of stuff. So we're constantly giving people things that they can share on social, giving things that they can share in a board meeting, giving things that they can talk about in their store, whatever it might be, to be able to help them get where they need to.
That's super cool. Now,
it's like a one-stop shop. It's like, this is the only thing that you need. It just makes it really easy. You can just call Green Places and we can take care of it.
And that's cool that there's an organization that exists like that. Because if you just, me, a random person on the street, I would not think that something like that exists.
Yeah, it's honestly, like, this is a luxury that, like, really big businesses have had for a long time. So if you were a business like Patagonia, you know, you have like teams of smart people who can do this stuff. But if you're the business down the street, it's untenable to go pay somebody, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure out how to do all this stuff. So those folks are left like without a real solution. And what we're a part of, like what we're existing in now, is what we're sort of calling like the sustainability transition. Every business across every sector, whether it's food, retail, CPG, services, is looking internally at the way that they operate. And they're trying to figure out how is their business going to exist over the course of the next 10 or 20 years, particularly like related to sustainability. And part of what's driving that is financial institutions are requiring disclosures. Lenders are asking for it as part of the loan process. And consumers and customers and employees are asking it of the people that they buy products from. And so you have this like point in time where all of us are having to figure out how to do this stuff. It's not super easy, but it's super important. And they have to figure out a way that they can operate where both their business, but also the planet thrives at the same time, which is definitely possible, but it's hard. And that's why we created what we created.
Yeah. And as you said, like the guy down the street, that may sound like really daunting.
Yeah.
And then you guys are the one-stop shop. You can do it all for them.
Make it super easy. Super easy. We'll take care of everything you need to be you need to be able to get your goals. And depending on the size and what your goals are, we can get pretty tactical with you and partner with you and help you. But we really sort of view ourselves as a good service for businesses that have this desire and no way to really actually do it.
That's awesome. So for me, I don't know much about the topic, right? So I go to a store. Let's say it's a local store. This is completely off script. So give me a break. But if I see like a store that I shop in, they give me, instead of a plastic bag, they give me a paper bag or a different kind of bag, like a cotton bag. Is that go towards the mission and the vision that you guys have?
Yeah, it would. That would be a way for that store to be able to participate. And not knowing specifically about what they're doing, you know, it's hard to say exactly. But, you know, generally speaking, there are a lot of things that we do that I would say are probably not super important relative to the carbon impact. And just like anything else, whether it's choosing the way that we eat, or it's looking at waste, like from a financial perspective. Businesses ought to at least once a year sort of look at their operations and say, do we have to do that? Is that a great example of this is I'm a big believer in this idea that you don't need to default to plastic cutlery in a takeout container. That's not to say that some people aren't eating in the car, because certainly we are sometimes, and we need to be able to have it. But just ask the question. Just ask the person, do you need this or not? And most of us will say no. So every time I do takeout, especially over the last year and a half, like the amount of plastic cutlery that I was able to just like acquire over a year in COVID is crazy.
Yeah.
And those businesses are spending money on that.
Yeah.
Those businesses are spending resources on that, and that has a huge carbon impact. So
And you think about like all these delivery drivers who like go DoorDash and Uber Eats, like they're putting the stuff in the bags too, and they're bringing it to people's homes where they have all that stuff already.
Exactly. And so like, again, that's a place where some of this sort of intersects with like common sense is like, do you need to be doing that stuff? Like, probably not.
Right.
And there's solutions like that for every business that sort of at their intersection of like both waste and sustainability that are not like, let's go spend more money. In fact, it's let's stop spending money on stuff that doesn't matter. And now we have an additional justification for that because, the planet.
100%. Now, you mentioned previously carbon neutral. What does that mean? Tell me.
Good question. This stuff is confusing. So there's a lot of terms. One's called carbon neutral, one's called net zero. Those mean different things. Carbon neutral, essentially, and I'm speaking broadly, means you have assessed your emissions. You know what you produce as a business. And then for everything that you produce from a carbon perspective, you are remediating in the environment. So you are funding projects that have a negative carbon impact to offset the carbon that your business produces. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you're off the hook. It doesn't mean that you don't produce anything. It just means that this is like low-hanging fruit. Like being carbon neutral is a low-hanging fruit thing that every business could do. And most people should be surprised that if you're a small or mid-sized business, this isn't like a huge thing, but it's a great way to get started. And it's a great way to signal to your employees and customers that you care and you're actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
So that's what carbon neutral means. Net zero means first we are going to reduce the amount of emissions that we do, and we're going to reduce as much as humanly possible, and then whatever's left over, we're going to invest in the environment. And that's another thing that you can do. But being carbon neutral, which is what BBB is, that's working with somebody like us. We can help you get there. We can help you navigate what this looks like. You get a great badge that you can put on your website, or in your store, or hotel, or wherever it is that you work. And you get tons of materials from us of like, what does it mean? How do you talk about it? How do you sort of fit into the discussion around climate change? And ultimately, it's something that you should feel proud of.
Right.
Something you can tell your employees and customers and say, hey, we're doing our part. And this is a certified way to be able to show that.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. And I'm sure a lot of these businesses really want to tote that because people, customers, potential employees, they're looking for that nowadays.
Oh, in a huge way. Deloitte came out with a report in December that says 78% of shoppers want to buy from brands and companies that are sustainable, but report not knowing which ones are and which ones aren't. This is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Google has started to make it much more apparent in search which businesses are sustainable and which aren't. So there's a good chance that people are already evaluating on this perspective. And employees are just consumers that work for you. So employees really care. And this is like the hardest labor market that I've ever been a part of. And if you really survey people and you ask them why, it's because we now have choice of where we work. And what's important to people is that they work for businesses that have value alignment and what they care about.
Right.
It's not just enough to just go collect a paycheck. When you can work from Raleigh or from Greenville or from Kinston, and you can work in a company anywhere, suddenly when that pool opens, you can be pickier about what you want.
Yeah.
And so if you're a business and you're trying to attract the top talent, which I would argue is the most important job of a CEO, like you've got to update what you do to speak to what people want. And right now what people want is they want value alignment. They want to know that they work for one of the good guys.
Right.
They want to know that the hours that they put in on a weekly basis are not making things worse.
Right.
And this is a great way to be able to show that and to talk to people about it and have a conversation and a discussion about it so they can see, wow, that's surprising, and I feel really good about who I work with.
So good.